Okay, we do have citizens' comments at this time. If anyone that would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. I don't know that we have many citizens joining us at this point in time, but any board members that want to make a comment also, just unmute yourself, speak out, please. We do have one citizen. We also have a member from the, we have, now Heather Burns is with us, Sean Brissett, and we have a member of the Board of Finance with us, Steve Herbert. So those at this point are any of the attendees. If you want to make a comment, raise your hands. I'd like the comments limited to 3 minutes and directed to the budget process. And also you do have another chance to make comments at the end of this meeting. Okay. Board of Ed members are welcome to speak out at any time. Just please recognize, wait to be recognized. Okay, at this point, I will try to get rid of this, go back to, okay. Educational update. I'll throw that over to Superintendent Smith.
An overview of the update for as of today, just speaking COVID wise, we are seeing somewhat of a slowdown. I know Larry couldn't say that today because he had quite a few staff people out. They did a remarkable job covering classes once again today. So we continue to have some staffing impact. I did notice that student attendance was better. Last week we were averaging around 160, 170 students absent. Today, I think we were down near 130, which is good news. Today, I did get finally contacted back from the state to do the Test and Stay program. The results of the survey we sent out to parents. More than half were willing. We only had about 300 respondents, but more than half were interested in having their children tested at school. So tomorrow we'll be sending out the consent form, and our partner in that will be Quest Labs. They'll come on site. They'll bring their own people, so there won't be an impact on our nursing staff. Once we get all the consent forms back, we'll start the Test and Stay program. And students will be tested. It doesn't include adults. There's still issues with the company that we were trying to secure for adult testing. However, we can now accept the home test, so it makes it a little easier for people.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who is going to start the budget presentation? Are you going to do that, Melinda? Thank you.
So on Friday, Bob prepared the budget sheets and we sent those out to you so that you could take a look at, where we're coming from money-wise. However, we started to put a draft PowerPoint presentation together. Danielle's going to help me advance the slides. And it follows a format that you're very familiar with. Okay. We try to keep a lot of the beginning information the same. So we're dating every presentation so that we can make sure that when you make changes, the Board of Ed make changes, we have it documented on the right PowerPoint so we don't have any confusion. After tonight's meeting, I'm certain you're going to make some required adjustments to this PowerPoint. Then we'll send it out tomorrow with the update, so you'll have it for the next meeting.
Okay.
Oh, Danielle, if you could advance the slide. This is the slide that has the members of the Board of Education listed and then myself at the bottom. The next slide is an overview of the administrative staff. And we have a couple of new members in there with Michelle coming on board. We usually forget Lisa Duran, so we did add her in there. And then, of course, our nursing director, Shannon. So the list is a little bit longer than typical, but this is our administrative staff. And then the next slide is our budget timeline, and you can see in yellow, that's where we are at today. We have until March 1st to get the budget submitted to the town. We have 3 meetings scheduled. And then, of course, sometimes we add or delete some of those meetings depending on how far we're going to get in the budget process. But you can see where we are today and the road ahead of us, which is a lot of meetings. Danielle, if you could advance. Our vision statement has been updated since the board has updated the vision statement in the same mission statement. So those are both here with the newly updated information. And next slide, Danielle. We talk about these advantages. We've always had this at the beginning of our presentation. I don't know if the board members want to add things or change things. But basically, we're telling the public that the town of Thompson and the students here are receiving an excellent return on their investment. The town is really proud of our school system, and that is true. We continue to gain external recognition for the accomplishments that we make, and that we just have a really great school community here. I don't know if the board wants to add anything, delete anything here. This is the slide that we typically use at the beginning of the presentation. So I'll pause for a minute in case somebody wants to discuss this slide.
Kathleen,
Yes.
is there a way we can add in what that external recognition is? Like,
What have we received?
right, just to kind of drive that home a little bit more.
Sure.
That's probably a good idea. You know, we need some, what are those things? What have we received as external recognition?
Okay.
Yeah, very good idea.
Those in. Danielle and I are both taking notes, so then tomorrow we'll compare them.
Okay.
Be able to update the slides. Anything else from anyone?
I have something.
Yes, Val.
Hi, everyone. How you doing?
We're doing well.
Can we put anything on there about being an accredited type of high school? I mean, should that be a point of,
Well,
Sure.
yeah, we can put both NEAC and whatever the other one is, and we received high marks in our elementary accreditation.
Yeah.
I just think that would add to that value statement that we're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because we did receive very high marks in that one anyway, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And we're in the process of updating our NEASC report. Obviously, the on-site visit is a few years off, but we have met some benchmarks along the way that we should be proud of.
Okay, well, let's pat ourselves on the back for that.
Okay.
And maybe it goes, the town is deservedly proud of the school system because we met these, you know, state or I don't know if they state or they regional.
Yeah, regional.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, you can put them under some of these bullets, but flesh out the bullets a little bit.
Okay. That'll make the slides a little different and give more information.
Yeah.
Slide obviously is a portrait of a graduate. We got to remember that the spending plan is based to support the portrait of a graduate, which a Thompson graduate is independent, knowledgeable, and community connected. And then the next slide just features attributes of what it means to be knowledgeable, independent, and community connected, and how the spending plan is going to support any of the improvements that the principals will talk about later to everyone. So that's the same as last year, but I always like to have that out in front because it is built to support the POG. So the district challenges, this isn't different from last year, and this might be another slide where you may want to revise or edit. that the budget doesn't include anything for unanticipated expenses. What we have in the budget is what we need to run the school system for next year. And it basically is aligned to the portrait of a graduate, but if there is unaddressed short and long-term capital improvement needs that require action but are not funded in this budget, you'll find out when Bill Birch does his presentation that he has a list of capital projects that he would like to address, similar to last year. We did not add that in the budget. Last year, the Board of Education decided to petition the town for those capital improvements, and as a result, we were able to get the floors replaced up at the high school, and there were a few projects that we put on hold. And I remember the Board of Finance saying to come back this year and present those projects again, which we intend to do. So I don't know if there's anything else besides the challenges that we have here. I didn't put the challenges related to COVID and health because at this moment in time, it's everybody's challenge.
I agree.
Kathleen,
Yes.
do we want to call out anything in here that we're not getting that grant money? I'm trying to remember the name of it. Mayflexer. There was 2 towns, us and someone
Oh,
else.
the Alliance grant, but we are getting some.
We are.
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Mayflexer helped us came through with that.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yep, we are getting that 200,000 this year and next year. It's now in state legislative language, which means that they're going to have to address it every time it comes up. But we are now getting 200,000 each year. Just as a reminder to everyone, that pays for the student support coordinator up at the high school, the Naviance platform that we're getting for college and career, our partnership with Teague, and we have a little bit of money to put aside for one of the capital improvements that Bill will talk about next week. So we can always come back to this if we we always have challenges, but this is what we had last year up front, and we felt like it was a good slide to keep.
Right. Melinda, I don't know that we're going to make a lot of changes tonight. I think we need to go through it and digest it and
Okay.
then think where the changes are going to be, because right off the top of my head, there's nothing glaring, but as we think about it, review the budget, then things will pop up maybe for next.
I want everyone to know that this PowerPoint is not complete. It's going to take us up to the principal's presentations tonight. And then the director's slides have to be added in, the district-wide slides, and Bob needs to finish the appendix up.
Yes, I noticed. Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, we're early in the process.
So the next slide shows the budget dashboard, and that's always good to look at. And the number I think that you're all interested in is the increase. The increase for my proposed budget going forward to the Board of Ed is a 2.4% increase. That's $458,539. And the next slide is going to be the important slide. The next slide are the primary budget drivers. So the first thing is that our contractual bus transportation fees for general ed and special ed, athletics and field trips is going to increase 3%. That is a $45,000 budget number that the Board of Ed absorbs into their budget. I want to also remind everyone, and I know Sean's on this call, that is a lot less expensive to the town of Thompson than replacing buses. And so the Board of Ed has absorbed those costs. So it goes up $45,000. However, that's on the Board of Ed side, but the town doesn't have any expenses in relation to transportation because the Board of Ed took all of that over. So I want to say that up front. As far as our fuel, our heating oil increase based on the current numbers now is a 35% increase or $70,000 to this budget. We have not locked in for our fuel price at this time. Bill Birch continues to monitor that. We just didn't feel comfortable, and neither did the town, to lock in at that higher rate. So right now, Bob did budget for what it would cost now. It's 75 cents a gallon on heating oil alone. As far as diesel and gas, that is an 18.5% increase, which is another $15,000. So you take 70,000 and 15,000, that's 85,000 right there just for fuel. As far as pupil services, we do have 27 students in out of district placement right now. Bob did budget for 27 students. Number, as you well know, fluctuates either up or down. The next item is health insurance. Now, health insurance, we projected an 8% increase. That would be an overall increase of $212,000. We did receive correspondence from the Connecticut Partnership that they received some American Rescue Plan funds as well, and that would have a positive impact on the budget. However, their budget number doesn't come out until April. It would be nice to see no increase at all, because then that would be a savings of $212,000. But as we're building this budget now, we felt we had to at least project an 8% increase unless we hear otherwise from the Connecticut Partnership. Bob said we can anticipate that probably sometime in April.
Okay.
So if you look at all of these things, the reason that we have a 2.4% increase, these are the budget drivers. What's really interesting about this budget this year is that our staffing numbers actually lower than last year, because the folks that we hired to replace the many positions that we juggled all year long actually came in under than last year. I see Heather has a hand up, Kathleen.
Okay, I'm in the speaker view, so I better go back to standard or side by side. I'm sorry about that. Heather, just speak up if you want to speak.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a quick question regarding the transportation one. Was in light of just what happened in 2020 with all the remote days, the lack of sports, and then this fall with the driver shortage, did we get any sort of, I don't know how the contract reads or whatever, but did we get any kind of credit or anything for all of that drama that happened in 2020 and the beginning of 2021 at all?
So yes, we did. In 2020, remember, there was a governor's order that said that we had to pay the bus companies, and we're encouraging districts to pay the bus companies their full contract. We went back and forth with DADCO for 6 months, and we did get a reduction in, I forget what the final amount was. I'm sure Bob remembers, but in 2020, we did get a reduction that year, but not significant. We still had to pay a portion of our contract. So there wasn't a significant amount of savings, but there was some. This year, remember that we had the bus driver shortage at the beginning of the year, and so we had buses that closed down. So Bob and I'm like a hawk with those invoices that come in from the bus company. The one thing I know is that when they have to combine buses, or for example, we don't have 2 BOAG buses running right now, we only have 1. We make sure that we're getting credit for those bus runs that are not running. And that could be a full-time job, staying on top of that, making sure that, the bus company hasn't combined runs and didn't let us know, and those kinds of things. So staying on top of that is trying. We are spending more money in after-school busing, primarily because we have all of those after-school programs running. We have our tutoring program, we have our math lab, we have our Beauty and the Beast rehearsal, and all of that. So at the end of the day, I think the credit is actually paying for the extra bus time that we're getting for after-school busing. But that's good news. But we are staying on top of that. In those 2 weeks at the beginning of the school year where there was a complete tier that didn't run for a school, we did get credit for that. But you have to look at that invoice every single month when it comes in, because they don't always credit you the right amount.
Okay, thank you.
what year are we in of the contract? Do we remember?
We do know that. So next year, you're gonna have to go out to bid because the contract will be expiring next year. That's correct, right, Bob? It's next year.
It is. We're going into year 5.
So this is the last year.
Well, next fiscal year is the last year. The contract expires June 30th, 2023.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, good to know. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
So, for everybody that, the 2.4% is a big number of an increase, but it is because of these things and nothing else. We did not add any new programs. We did not add any new staff. Everything is basically status quo.
So Melinda, on that 450 some odd thousand, half of it is related to the health insurance, correct?
Correct.
So
Correct.
any reduction off of that 8% projected is a win.
Yes.
And okay,
Yes. And I hope it's a really nice win and it comes in flat. That would be great.
Yeah.
Because that cuts the increase right in half. But as we're going through the process, we're not going to know probably heating fuel, that health insurance, we're probably not going to know that until probably April.
now one other thing is, have we, I know Bob encumbers, or he plans for some sort of retirements and, staff, the resignations. Have we done any projections on what we're looking at for retirements or anything that would affect the budget?
So far, I haven't heard any retirements outside of the one I got today for a paraprofessional. But teacher retirements, I haven't heard of any as of today, but they usually trickle in closer to the spring. Bob, I don't believe you put any breakage in this budget.
I did. It was, and I'll give you the exact amount, but I had it lower. 2 years ago, we had, 2 fiscal years ago, we had a lot of retirements. And, fortunately for the folks that worked for us that retired, we could split it over a couple of different fiscal years too. So it wouldn't take the impact all at once. But I have right now, Tom, let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, because I know last year I remember you saying that, it's always a good thing just to put something as a placeholder.
So to give you a hint, in 2021, we spent $125,000. Last year, for this fiscal year that we're in now, I have it at 85, and next year I have it at 65.
Okay.
So I have it going down, and by 20 grand, but I don't anticipate the amount of. We had some big payouts for folks, but again, it helped us split it across a couple of fiscal years. So I do have it. I have it gone down.
Yeah, I think Kathleen, I think you would agree that it's nice to at least have something in there rather than just zero.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Anticipate. We have to
All right.
anticipate somebody retiring and things, and we're still making some payouts, aren't we?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
did some in the first paycheck in January. Some folks that had retired last year,
Mhm.
just to move it into another. For them, it was a tax advantage to move it into January too. So when these 3 or 4 people left at the same time, we negotiated that split to make it easier on us budgetary and make it easier on them for tax purposes.
Right.
All right, good.
Okay. Moving to the next slide is the budget overall and how what sections of the budget and what the amount is. Danielle tried to make those numbers a little bit brighter and clearer. I think she did a pretty good job. I can read them all. So that they look pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's how the budget breaks down. And then, of course, the next slide is a 6-year budget history, and 2023, we can change that to proposed just to see the percent changes over time. And if you look at that, right, our percent increases have really been low.
Sad.
That's the story of
Well, you know
that.
what? I'm going to go do a study, and Sean Brissett gave me some information today, which I think is really, really pertinent to this slide that I know. I go back and do our percent changes against inflation. And
Bob does have a slide in there against inflation.
oh, he does. Great.
It does.
It
The
just,
inflation year to date so far for fiscal year 2022, based on
Hmm.
month-to-month projections through December, is 6%.
right. And, and if we were to go back to 218 and do what we, our 0.45%, I know inflation hasn't been a horrible factor in 18-19, but it started to pick up in 2021. We're not even keeping even close to inflation. And never mind our contractual costs with teachers and with our staff increases, which we're obligated to do. If anybody, Tom, and Bill, you're on the negotiating committee, we can't not give raises. We would be taking to an arbitration, and we would lose.
Correct.
So we have to give the raises that we give to our unions. I don't think
just to
you
make another-
understand that.
No.
I would love not, yes, in the real world, if you will, they go a couple of years without raises. Well, we can't do that. They would take us to arbitration. We would spend $50,000, $60,000 on a lawyer and lose and have to give the raise anyway. At whatever the prevailing average rate was in the state of Connecticut.
Well, I think the last contracts that the Board of Ed has negotiated, you've come in at or a little bit below state average for increases. So
We've done a very good job, thanks to the negotiating team, at getting below because of our area and because of our staff who understand, thanks to them too, below the state averages because they take Fairfield County, they take Litchfield County and mush it all together. So we would be in trouble if we went to negotiate that arbitration. And it's thanks to the people, the dedicated staff that we have. And I don't think the Board of Finance or some of the taxpayers in this town appreciate the fact that how hard we work to keep these costs down. And giving percent changes like this just hurts the school system and hurts the educational process. All right, I'm getting off my soapbox.
So, and the other thing, to bear in mind is that the reason we've gotten by the last few years is because we've gotten some additional grant support. Otherwise, I don't think we would have made it by, coming out the way we have. So thanks to those things, but that is all going to end soon. And we're going to end up looking at larger increases after next year if we want to keep some of the important support staff that we have on our budget.
Right.
So the next slide is fixed costs versus variable costs. So Bob shows it nicely here in a pie chart that the contractual costs are fixed, which is most of the pie, and then the non-fixed are the supplies and equipment across the departments. The next slide is the one that everybody likes to show, but I think a lot of people don't understand is that the town's contribution to the budget is really the number 11,793, that the rest comes from the state and then from special ed excess cost. And it shows it nicely in this pie chart here, that most of the money, although it does a good 60% does come from the town, not all of it does.
Right.
And then I
So
think,
Melinda, hold on 1 second. So how
Yeah.
do we, this is one of those slides that if I'm a taxpayer, what I'm saying then is why am I approving funding for 19 million? But I think what we have to do, and I don't know if we do it here or if it's just we have it ready as a talking point. It's more or less the town has to outlay the funds of 19 million, which is a spending plan, let's just say.
Mhm.
And then we get reimbursements of 7.5, well, more than that, 7.7. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
So I think, I mean, I love this slide. Trust me, I love it. I just want to make sure that we're prepared to answer the question when somebody asks, why am I approving a $19 million spend plan?
maybe we need to get out the fact that we're reimbursed that 7.7, like we do for other things that the town outlays first, and then we get the reimbursement back. I think it should be definitely a talking point.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, go ahead, Bob.
Then the town gets they get the state ECS payment in 3 pots. They get a third. They have a third in hand already. That's 1.8 million. They get another 1.8 million in February, and then they get the balance, which is 3.6 million in May. And the thing with that money is that it's the reason that it's told this way. And one of the things to remember is that because we're an alliance district, this pot of money doesn't go down. If we were not an alliance district right now, the money that we would get, the money that the town of Thompson would get in state ECS money would be 5.3%. Would be $5.3 million. So one of the benefits is that we're in a hold harmless agreement with the state for ECS money, where it doesn't go down, where plenty of other towns around us, their amounts have gone down over the course of the last couple of 3 years, and it's projected to go down, continue to go down. So that's another way to look at it too, but it's not a reimbursement. It's the state, the statutory ECS money is for the state's contribution to its education cost sharing with the town.
So how do we convey that in a manner that I don't know.
Out of a $20 million budget, out of a $19 million budget, the taxpayers in Thompson directly contribute 60% of that money. The other
in their property taxes. They're going to
Correct.
turn around and tell you that their income taxes are taking the 38,
See, I always like this slide, but yet sometimes I feel that it's going to come back to bite us, because a taxpayer would say, well, if your budget is truly 11.7, why are you asking for 19, knowing that you're going to get 7.7 back from the state? You see what I'm saying? And I mean, we don't have to answer it tonight, but I mean, I do like this slide. Trust me, I do. I just don't want it to, come full circle on us. Just something to think of. It doesn't have to be decided tonight.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so the next slide basically talks about the regular federal and state grants, the ones that we get every year. The numbers do fluctuate. It's based on a formula. So that Title I and Title II, the 170, 785, that's based on however they calculate that at the Department of Ed. But these are our typical grants that we get every year. And then the next slide shows the amount of staff that we hire that are completely paid by those grants. So 19 people that work in the district are paid on those grants. And we did include the Alliance and ESSER2 and ARP. Now we have, specialty positions covered under that.
I have a grant question. I know when I spoke with you previously, Melinda, that there isn't a dedicated grant writer, that people kind of take the reins as needed when things come up that are of interest. I'm just curious, is there additional grants or funds that are out there that we could maybe win, but we just don't go after it because we don't have the staff to write the grant?
There's plenty of grants like that, especially on grants.gov. Right now, we just partnered, I think I mentioned in my briefs, we just partnered with Trifecta again to get a $50,000, expansion for curriculum work around the aquaponics farm. That is a grants.gov. His people on his side pulled together that grant for us. Certainly I do the legwork and get him whatever he needs. Bob always does the financials, and we hand that information over. Small grants like I'm writing today for LPC, those are small grants, but we don't have a dedicated grant writer. I don't know if the town has Tara Penn, who writes grants really well. And if I needed her, I could certainly run a grant by her, but to have someone do that, to look for those grants would be ideal, but always remember that that doesn't offset the cost of what the town has to provide for educational funding. It's for those extra programs that we'd like to bring into the district.
So I'm just curious, would you say that if we did have a dedicated grant writer, that there would be enough grants for them to win that would pay for their salary and more?
Well, in the past, I used to contract with a grant writer part-time. And so they would get a certain fee to fill out a grant. And then the indirect costs from the grant that you received more or less perpetuated the next grant. And so there wasn't really outlay of district money, but you have to get the ball rolling with one or two grants up front. And she would charge $8,000 to write a federal grant. And then, of course, we got the grant. That the initial outlay came out of the BOE budget. And then the next time we were able to use indirect costs to offset the fees associated with the grant. So it can happen. It's just that we've just not gone looking for a grant writer at this point. And there is obviously an initial outlay, but there are people out there that do it part-time for districts. That's something I can bring up to my regional superintendents and find out if any of them are using a grant writer on a part-time basis. Maybe we can jump on board with that.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I think since, we obviously every year have trouble even just getting a modest, increase passed by the town. And then, of course, when we only are doing these modest increases, we never have the money for the stuff that really makes the difference, that sets you apart, that gives you that kind of full education that the children deserve. So I'm just wondering if it makes sense to have someone either be part-time or something to pull in to get those resources that we just can't seem to get together from a taxpayer standpoint. If the money can be offset, if they can bring in more than it costs us to have them.
Do a little research on that and have it ready for you to see if there's neighboring districts that are using someone and what the costs associated are. It would be good to know.
Thank you.
Just a thought, playing off of what Heather just said. Again, I don't know what's entailed in a full submission of a grant application. I should probably look at one, but is this something that we could do in coordination with the PTO. Let it be a subcommittee of the Board of Ed, overseen by the Board of Ed. And if, say I'm just using a PTO or project graduation, if we had the group together to write it, a portion of a proceed goes to them as a fundraiser contribution, and then the rest is provided to the school. Is there a conflict in there?
So it depends on the grant, the funder, right? Usually when somebody is posting a grant, it's for a very specific purpose. I'll use farm to school because I know that one well. Farm to school wants to, their initial goals are that children learn how food is grown, that school districts are engaging in local procurement of produce and other, other items that can go into food service. So they have a very specific goal. So when you write that grant, it has to be for those goals. And then obviously they score your grant application based on, are you meeting the goals? And so because they're so specific, it's very often, it will never offset the Board of Ed budget, right? But it is, as Heather said, might be able to fund some of the extra activities like the aquaponics farm and other things that we do in the district, career pathways that we might want to expand. No,
I guess maybe I didn't say it correctly, but if we say a grant writer gets $5,000 for a grant,
correct.
if we were to pay, say, project graduation, they wrote a grant, we got the grant, we gave them a donation of $3,000. And then we ended up getting the grant. I was just thinking, is there a way that we can get a committee together to write the grants versus us, and keeping the money in-house and supporting one of our organizations? I mean, I don't know. I'm just pie in the sky, but just thinking.
So
There's an issue with nonprofit too, because that would be considered using your nonprofit as a pass-through, which is a big no-no. So you could actually kill your PTOs or project graduation with that, because there's an obscene amount of rules regarding that.
Okay. No, good point.
Well, okay.
Heather did bring up the idea, and we can talk about this at another time, of creating our own nonprofit. And we can talk about that, where, getting a 501c3 status and having a foundation that would do just what you're explaining, go after grants and look for grants and write grants and have a committee that might be a subcommittee of the board. So we can talk about that.
Kathleen, is that a conflict if we had a subcommittee grant writing under the board?
I don't know the answer to that. Let's look into having like a consultant that writes grants first. I think you'd probably be much more productive with that. Writing grants is an art.
Yeah, no, trust me, I agree. I've never
and I don't know that unless you have, a really dedicated community volunteer, that we have expertise in doing that. So let's move along and stay with the budget. Okay, please.
So the next slide, I'm going to turn over to Nate Mayo, Dr. Mayo. He's going to talk a little bit about Turtle Out Memorial High School, his goals for next year. He does not have an increase in his budget in either the other principals, except for the fact that we had to move around some nursing salaries because they weren't in the right place for the Department of Ed. But other than that, Dr. Mayo, I'm going to turn this over to you to talk about what your projections and goals are for next year. Just need to unmute yourself. Danielle, is he with us?
I'm trying to find him in the waiting room. Just give me one moment. I think Bryce has to let him in.
I'm not seeing him in here.
Okay, let's give him. He just texted me. He's going to be right there.
Okay.
Would you like to move to middle school next, Melinda, while we wait for him?
Why don't we? So Principal Granado, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Good evening, everyone. All right, well, the good news at the middle school for the budget is that we are not increasing anything. We are actually, the only increases are like Superintendent Smith said, is just due to the nurse going on our budget and the health increases, which we don't have anything to, I can't control that.
Right.
So as being new, Mrs. Palachak and I and our leadership team, we're not going to add any new initiatives right now because we're just trying to get through this year and evaluate status and see our data. And we are actually really building our resource bank with Teague. So we meet weekly with Teague, and Jill and her team has been a great asset to us with providing us lots of programs with things that are needed for our students, like our social emotional component. And also they've hopped on and helped us with some tutoring as well as our after school tutoring. They've also been very engaged with us in our attendance program. So they're really hitting all the aspects of student need. Also did, as I've mentioned in my BOE reports, they have also have done grade 6, 7, and 8 bullying. And we're able to 5, 6, 7, 8 bullying. We're able to bring in some guest speakers. And also grade 7 and 8 have had their personal team with Teague on a workshop around bullying. And now we are starting with 5th and 6th going forward. So we're really excited about that because that doesn't cost us anything here at the middle school. We are very excited. Dr. Mayo is going to do a great job explaining his slides, but we're actually hopping on board with Dr. Mayo and his vision. Again, this year, just him and I, he has invited me to a lot of Portrait of a Graduate pathway meetings and different possibilities going on at the high school that we eventually are going to want to hop on with because it's great opportunities for our middle schoolers. It's something that I've also done in my past, so I know it's very valuable. So, but again, so two things where we are promoting our work with Portrait of a Graduate. We're tapping into all our local resources, and also just coming aboard, looking to discuss our possible pathways with the high school. So that's our focus for next year.
Thank you. Did Dr. Mayo join us?
Yes, I'm here. I apologize.
Okay, Dr. Mayo, we're going to turn this, go back to your slide, and you can talk about all the work you've been doing on the back side that's going to help your goals for next year.
Sure. I broke it down into a couple of key areas. And when I came to Total Audit, I kind of looked at what we call the Massachusetts accountability standards. So I kind of took that and brought that with me to Total Audit and kind of looked at a couple of different things. One of the things, obviously, that we need to work on is retaining Thompson rising freshmen. And when I talked to a couple of the families in the community, we had talked about opportunities. So what we're looking at is we're looking at offering different opportunities through the pathways model that I know Principal Ganato has mentioned, and that's going to take a couple of different avenues really for us. I think traditionally the pathways model has been almost a vocational component. We are going to do that. We're looking to do that, get our students certifications, but also we're looking to partner with colleges and offer college credit. I have a meeting with QVCC again next week to kind of expand our offerings that will offer our students college credit. I have been in meetings with Anna Maria College. We have been in meetings, both Kate Anderson and I went down and met with Eastern Connecticut to offer some things maybe through them, through music and theater, as well as art. We have been in communication with Central Connecticut State University. So we have a couple of different pathways that we're trying to build there that our kids will get college credit for. We're looking at redoing the, I can't remember what the terminology for it was, but basically the kitchen on the first floor and kind of turn that into more of an industrial kitchen. We do have a partnership in place with QVCC with a culinary program with them. So we're kind of looking to do that. One of the things too that we're looking to retain our freshmen is to build a better communication model between the school, families, the community. That's one of the things that I kind of noticed when I did come in. You know, unfortunately, the first day I came in, I had a number of dropouts on my desk. And one of the things that when I was looking through it, there was a lack of communication, a lack of logs, lack of documentation. So looking to build that in, really build that partnership with the community. We want to highlight, do a more effective job of highlighting and showcasing achievements of our students and of the school as a whole. That's something as well. I came in, there's some things told to me, but I think we can do a better job there. One of the things that we're kind of looking at, and I know that we're trying to get some money through a grant that our students are working on, but it's an updating of the weight room. And that was something that, yes, it has to do with retaining students, but it also has to do with when I came in, a little bit of equipment there is some of the equipment from 1982. So it's a little bit outdated. I know I met with Deb, we walked through it. Some of the stuff is borderline. There's a safety issue as far as cords being frayed and things like that. So instead of them coming out to try to fix, we're looking at maybe replacing. When you go down to dropout rate, as I said before, that's something that I'm kind of, it's a pet peeve for me. Obviously we want to work at our graduation rate. We can't do that until we fix our dropout rate. When I look at that, I'm looking at, we built in a student support coordinator. That was something that we used state money to build in. It's been very, very effective so far. We've exceeded our parent meetings more so than we did last year, only at the half mark. We built plans. We had more kids, more students pass the second quarter than we had previously. So we're working on building in student success plans, really kind of building those relationships with parents and things like that. We also want to create a protocol and process prior to students dropping out. We're working with Teague, our partnership with Teague. I have with the student support committee as well as my school social worker and my school counselor. We're creating a group. Just Mr. Polsky, the dropout rate is not a state, unfortunately, in Connecticut is not a state number. It's in Massachusetts, it is. Our graduation rate as of last week, when it was released from last year, is 80% even, 80. So what we're looking at right now is about 16% over 4 years, which is extremely high. That's a rough number. That's not a number reported to the state. That was from myself, my counselors figuring that number out. So explore, and we're also looking to explore alternative pathways if a student is struggling for supports and things along that line. Having said that, when you come down to the 4-year graduation rate, which is really my big thing, we are looking to, again, the student support coordinator has been a tremendous addition for us. Again, going back to utilizing parental and family communication, interventions and supports. We have been lucky to be able to use Apex, which is a free online course or courses through the state of Connecticut. So we have enrolled our students who have failed previous courses through Apex. It's another way with limited staff and limited scheduling that we can kind of build in courses for them to remediate. So that has been going pretty well. Obviously, we're looking at adding in Naviance, which is going to be tremendous help. It's an all-in-one platform. I used it in my previous employment. It's really good at monitoring students and building student interest pathways. Also, as well as it's a good holding for the online portfolio. It's an all-in-one, and it's a good way to communicate with colleges and kind of showcase all that our students do. Also, we want to use those pathways to keep students engaged and hopefully keep them along that 4-year graduation cohort. One of the other things that we're looking at is our chronic absenteeism. It's just below 18%. Just tremendously high number. In bringing in the student support, and bringing in this social worker, the school social worker, she has taken on the role of as attendance officer as well. She has partnered with TIG. Actually, we had an attendance meeting this morning. She has bi-weekly attendance meetings with the team. We review chronic absenteeism. We put together plans for every student, work with the families and TIG to try to support the student and get them in. I don't have an updated number for that right now. I do know that we cut some back. Hopefully by the end of this quarter, which is, academically finished by the end of the winter session, I should have a better hold on where we're at for that. And again, the big thing with that is keeping accurate records. And we want to make sure everything is right prior to submission to the state. That's another thing that I kind of put in as a process in which we'll review before any type of submission. Now we have best prepare for students for life after Tour. Okay, and what we have here is we have pathways, preparing students for post-high school academic work or military life. As I said before, we're working on adding articulation agreements with QVCC, additional ones. UConn, we are looking at adding something with them through the program that we currently have, but adding more offerings. Anna Maria College, Nichols additional. I know Trish Tupai has a number of them already in place through her program. We're looking at possibly adding a couple of there. Eastern Connecticut and Central CCSU. So our goal is for our college-bound students to leave high school with a number of college credits as high as we possibly can get, cutting down our prerequisites requirements for the schools that they're going to. Just a reiteration, Naviance will help us guide our students in the system in choosing a track that's best for them. So there's a lot of interest inventories and supports within that program. Every student, this is one of the big things when I walk in the door, every student that graduates will have a plan, and we will know what that plan is prior to them walking across the stage of graduation. So my expectation is we will have an Excel sheet. On the Excel sheet will be every graduating senior, what their plan is, as well as updated information for contacts, so we can kind of keep them in contact with them and see where they are along that plan even after graduation. Any questions about any of this?
Matt, did you get your question answered?
I did, thank you.
Okay.
That is an astonishingly high number of not graduating.
Yeah, I mean, I came just as a point. I came from a economically disadvantaged community. 1,500 in high school. We're at 97. So we can, and my expectation, and I know I've not the superintendent a number of times, we can and will get there, but it's going to have to take. And there was a lack of procedure protocol at the high school, and we've put some things in I think that are going to support our students, as well as kind of move some positions around as far as responsibilities in order to best support our students and their families. So my expectation is we will climb.
Okay. And I also just want to add that, having the student support coordinator, that person is meeting regularly with students and their families, and they're not letting, a large amount of time go by where the child is falling further and further behind. Failure rates, I know that they're on top of failure rates now, which is, the prerequisite for dropping out, right? So, filling that gap with the APEX program and getting kids to pass, intercession being implemented, which is another way to get kids caught up. I think that we're going to see that number improve. That's one of the reasons, one of the actual drivers of why we're an Alliance district is because of our graduation rate and dropout rate. Obviously our state test scores contribute as well, but it is that graduation rate that is one of the variables that they look at closely for accountability. So.
Thank you.
And then I guess unless anybody else has questions of the high school, I'm going to turn it over to Larry at the elementary school.
Good evening, everybody. How are you?
No, we're fine. How
All
are
right.
you?
I'm pretty good. So, like Melinda indicated, it's pretty much status quo, but just a few important points and highlights to note as it relates to the elementary school. Much like the high school and the middle school, you'll see a school nurse was added to the elementary budget. I believe it was previously in the health budget. So that'll be a change. Secondly, for next school year, we are actually exploring the possibility of science being put into the UA team rotation. So and just for clarification, nobody will lose a position. We would be eliminating a UA subject content area and inserting science in its place. This particular idea was proposed to the school leadership team, and it was received well by the teachers on that team. There's a teacher from every grade level and content area on that team, and it was received well. It does have several benefits having science being part of the UA rotation. One benefit is basically that it will free up time for the classroom teachers to focus their instructional time and effort on reading and math. And then additionally, it will ensure that science will be taught with a lot more consistency across the grade levels. So that was one idea. The next highlight with respect to the PBIS program that we have in the elementary school. So the elementary school recognizes the importance that the positive and the fun initiatives that the PBIS team work on. We recognize that it has a huge impact on the climate of the school. The kindness chains that we've worked on this year, the building the scarecrows, the sleigh rides with Santa. So we recognize that, kids are impacted by that and teachers are impacted by that. So we're going to look into some ways and how to enhance that part of our budget, that PBS part of our budget. And that'll be truly beneficial to the school system. Finally, with the assistance of this year's curriculum experts and leaders, Patty Chenille, Laura Stefanski, and Lucy Trudeau, the elementary school is actually currently looking at modifying our daily schedule. So we're attempting to find different ways to maximize student learning at each grade level to ensure that, one, we're meeting the mandated instructional minutes, and we're also looking for a schedule that will allow the teachers to utilize and to leverage the strategies that they're learning with those curriculum leaders and in those meetings. So that's what's happening at the elementary school. We're just blessed to be able to work with a lot of dedicated, Kathleen, you had mentioned it in the beginning of the presentation. There are so many dedicated individuals in this district, and they work so hard. And so we're just looking to leverage their expertise. It's pretty much status quo, but they do a great job, and that's the train of thought at the elementary school for next year.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
I just have a quick question about the science thing.
Sure.
So I think that's intriguing of possibly adding science to the UA, but how will you integrate? I hope you're not losing the computer aspect. Like, will they still have, been able to be taught basic typing or basic utilization of the computer? I know there was some of that being done before they'd entered into middle school, so that when they come to middle school, they're not shell shocked with having to all of a sudden know how to do PowerPoints and constantly having to use Chromebooks for everything. Is there still going to be kind of an integration, not losing the typing aspect and all of that?
Right. So I think one of the benefits, that's a great question. And that was one of the questions that one or two individuals had from the school leadership team. But I think by and large, the teachers recognize that they're going to be able to teach those skills in the classroom. The benefit that we have is we're a one-to-one school system, and kids from pre-K through grade 4 are using those Chromebooks quite regularly. And I do believe the classroom teachers feel as though that they can teach those skills in the classroom. But that was a great question, and that's something that we discussed. It's weighing out those benefits of having science, which is a tested subject in the middle school, and so weighing the benefits of having a tested area versus and part of the curriculum that would be taught consistently. So you have one individual that's teaching science at the elementary school. You can ensure that they have a solid scope and sequence. They know exactly what they're teaching. They know exactly what students are leaving at each grade level. And they're doing it with fidelity because it's one individual that's doing it. So you're weighing the pros and cons of having that take place versus some of the skills which were beneficial in the computer technology UA part. So it was a great question, Heather. That's something that we discussed, but I feel like the elementary teachers do feel as though some of those skills can be taught in the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so Kathleen, the next slide basically just talks about the nursing department and that the school nurse salaries were added into the individual school budgets where they were not before. And that's where we end up with our budget tonight as far as our presentation. The directors next week, their presentations prepared for you. I will also have, if we have time, I'll do district-wide. Other than that, that's basically where we've gotten ourselves to.
Okay. Do any board members I have a citizen's comment, well, actually a Board of Finance comment, but do any directors, any board members have any questions as of this time on what we've discussed tonight?
I'd like a little more clarification, please, from Mr. Prentice about the science thing. As a science guy, I just want to make sure, how would that work in the schedule? Like, so how would that work in the schedule, I guess is the question. I understand it's one dedicated person. That does sound good and it's consistent, but in terms of the amount of science teaching, where does that fall in, please?
So currently the UA consists of phys ed and art and library. So it would, one of those, so right now the UA meets one time per week for 45 minutes. And this year we're utilizing FOSS-Kits, the science curriculum that we're using, or the FOSS-Kits curriculum. So the time would be the same. It would still be 1 day a week. It would be for 45 minutes. So that really wouldn't change, Matt. I think we looked at it. I think the biggest piece we looked at was just having one consistent individual delivering instruction at the elementary school. And in addition to that, so a big plus to that is now the classroom teachers are spending less time prepping for science, and that will allow them more instructional time in reading and mathematics. And so that frees up their schedule a little bit as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then Larry, I want to dovetail on that. Being an previous elementary teacher, the amount of prep that you have for all those content areas, sometimes you just run out of time and might not get to that science lesson. This way, we can ensure that the scope and sequence in science that is going to be implemented across K-4 with fidelity, because then it builds as it gets up to the middle school, and those prerequisite skills and that knowledge base needs to be in place so that the middle school can take the students to the next place in science. So what we've seen is some gaps with that, not anyone's fault, just over the fact that sometimes teachers just run out of time. And the past 2 years, they certainly have run out of time because they've been devoting their time on reading, math, and any kind of achievement gap. So
Heather, you have your hand
Yes,
up.
I just, with having the science, will they have like a dedicated room, much like music has a dedicated room and art has a dedicated room? Because I will say, like when my kids were at Mary Fisher, when they did do, they had like a room that was unused that they would sometimes do experiments in, and they thought that was awesome when they got to use the room, you know? And so will they have a dedicated science room that will have labs and be able to do more kind of hands-on science experiments that they wouldn't otherwise necessarily be able to do if they were just in their regular classroom?
Yes, they will. They absolutely will have a dedicated room for science.
Right. That sounds cool.
the good news about that position is that we're making a trade-off, right? Because we feel that it, and I think Larry talked to his leadership team and felt that the science was a focus that they really needed to, implement with fidelity and get that curriculum going.
Okay.
So we're at the end of just the presentation we prepared for tonight. I don't know if there's anything you want to see next week, Kathleen, outside of the individual directors' reports.
Well, we'll have a copy of the PowerPoint by next week, and
Correct.
we'll have, Bob, how are you coming along on the appendices?
Great.
Good for you, Bob. That's the attitude.
I've been pulling down reports from some of the classics that I get from. I update those.
Okay.
Have a file,
Right.
called fun facts, and I keep dumping stuff in it all year long. So
Because I've gone through the package and made notes on the numbers, and some of my notes refer to, hey, I need to look at an appendix. I need that kind of stuff on the notes. I do have there is a citizen's comment in the chat box, but Steve, Mr. Herbert, do you want to actually verbalize it, or do you want me to read it? Are you still with us? Yeah, you're still with us. Do you want to read your comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, was muted there for a while. Yeah, my comment is basically that seeing an overall proposal that increased the school spending by about by 2.4%, I was just that's great. My concern is inflation's going up 6% or more, actually. Is there enough in there? I know you've had some pluses in the sense that negotiated labor contracts in the past that didn't anticipate this kind of inflation and or provide for less of an increase than you might otherwise expect. But wow, inflation 6%, you're going up 2.4. That's fantastic and great, but just a fear that it's not enough. And then sort of in part of that is, or in addition to that, was the thought that I know that there's you've not funded for any possible problems, but would a contingency amount be appropriate? Just in case of, I don't know what, obviously, but just to cover, the extra special needs students that might come in. And I know the argument would be, well, there's some might go out and therefore it costs to be lower, but I don't know what, but should we fund or should we budget something for those kinds of issues?
Well, so we grappled with this, putting the budget together. We know that there was unexpended funds from FY22, and once the auditors finish their report, there will be a positive variance for the school department. I know Chairman Herbert is going to, and the Board of Ed has directed me to ask the Board of Finance to keep that money in the contingency set aside monies for either capital or special education overages. We don't budget for and never have budgeted for additional special education out of district costs or even in-house costs for special education students. Right now, we budgeted for the exact number of students we currently have outplaced. It would always be a good idea, and it's always been my experience that you had 1 or 2 tuitions added to the budget just in case, right? And it always comes to pass that you end up having to use those funds because students do move into the district. Since I've come to Thompson, we've never been able to do that because of the reduction that takes place in the budget. Once it leaves the Board of Ed's hands, it becomes reduced and then the budget doesn't pass. So we decided not to ask for it up front. It's not that we don't need it, we do need it.
I guess I understand your approach. Again, it was just a thought that perhaps something in there, even if it gets cut later, I don't know, maybe there's a plus to having a contingency in there, just sort of the just in case kind of thing. And again, I don't know what I mentioned special ed because I know in the past some of those changes have been very, very large and just plain unbudgeted cause I think harm to the school. And that's just sort of my thought behind it. So
no, we agree with you wholeheartedly. We just don't know how to address that in the budget and whether or not, I guess that'll be up to the Board of Ed to make that decision. Should we add those tuitions or add some money to the special ed budget?
thank you very much for the response.
Okay. Bill Birch, next week you will have a list of the projects that you're working on, both capital and repair and maintenance, major projects.
I will.
Thank you.
Kathleen,
So
Yes.
can we get I don't know, an average of how many extra, I don't want to call it extra, but how many additional special education students we get maybe over the course of school years, like do like a survey over the last 4 to 6 years to see how many we may have been possibly under budgeting for, as well as what we're seeing for unexpected costs, as well as to what we've had to either go back to the Board of Finance for over the past several years. So that's something that we could discuss adding in as possible contingency funds for later.
That would be. Yeah,
we can have Mr. Jones add that into his presentation, and he can give us an overview of, what's changed, what we budgeted for as far as outplacements, and then what did we actually end up spending. I'm sure we have that information going back several years.
How many years back would you like me to go, Superintendent Smith?
Well, I think Jessica asked 4 to 6 years, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know Bob has that readily available, like what was budgeted and what was spent. And then I just asked the directors that the sooner you get those slides to Danielle and Bob, then we can send out the updated PowerPoint so they can look at it before the next meeting, which is
next Monday.
Danielle, is it Monday? Next Monday. So if we could have it so they have time over the weekend to look at it, that would be great.
Yes. Okay.
Kathleen,
Yes, Tom.
with me traveling, I won't be here on Monday. Do you want me to look at whatever Danielle sends out and I'll send you some comments?
Sure. If you can't zoom in, yes, that
All
would
right,
be
because,
fine.
yeah, because I'll be 2 hours, 2 hours behind you guys, so we'll still be at the
Okay,
show.
no,
All right.
that'll be perfectly fine, and I'll read your comments.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, and Bill W.
Jess Bolte has her hand up. Yeah.
No, I was signaling to somebody in the background. Sorry.
No, you
Oh.
still have your hand up.
No,
Oh,
your hands.
Nope.
Still have the old yellow hand up. Bill,
care of it now.
Bill Wachowski, if I can recall, going back when I first joined the board, which was 10 years ago now, we did budget special education for an average of sometimes 30 students. When we had like 26, we used the worst case scenarios.
We probably did. I don't recall specifics, but we
Yeah.
always tended to go on the high side for the just in case thing.
Yeah.
And it was always cut out. So
Right,
I mean,
right. But we did do the higher number, the just in cases, because we had experienced that number.
Mhm.
So there
Yeah.
is a precedent for that.
sure.
Because I definitely remember saying, hey, we've only got 24. Why are we budgeting for 30? Well, because at one time we had 30.
Right. And it's a moving target. Nobody really
Yeah.
knows. So,
Sure.
if we look at the trend over the last 5 years, as Chris is going to do, we'll figure it out.
Okay. So yeah, we have set precedences for budgeting for more than we have right now. So. And back then we were not able to offset it by the refund that we get from the state money. The town kept that money.
Right.
Yeah, and what's been happening here since I've been here is that we do a bare bones budget, right? And then we have more students move in, we have students that we have to support. And so then we look at other programming and make reductions there, which impact
Right.
even more in the district. So yeah, it's been a vicious circle.
Which is
Right.
wrong. We've always had regular ed suffers because being a good citizens, we take it out of our regular ed monies and put it towards the special ed. And I thought a couple of years ago, we kind of said, we're not doing that anymore. We're not gonna do that.
That's exactly right. We had to go back to the Board of Ed and said, hey, Board of Finance and said, hey, we need funding. And we notified them every single meeting as we were going along. It was a moving target how much money we needed to fund the special education. But they had to fund us some money, 120 something thousand, but believe. But we just can't continue to do that to our regular ed kids. So I would rather put a couple extra, as long as we have justification for doing that, Chris, I'd rather put some extra money in the special education.
I definitely think we would have justification to do that based
Okay.
on what I've seen over the last 3 years at least. So,
Okay. So
and
come up with,
we know we have Mr. Herbert's support on that. So when it goes to the Board of Finance, he'll advocate for us.
yes. He will. Okay. Anybody have any further questions? I urge you to go through the individual numbers as we go through the directors. And then we'll get into the regular package, but make yourself familiar with the package. Come up with some questions on the numbers that you have. And we will meet again next Monday at 6 o'clock. Tom, make sure, email me any questions that you have or concerns that you have on the budget. Or the presentation that we get. And hearing that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
I'll second it. This is Linda.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 You.